This is TrekSpeak, the vidcast and podcast available at trekspeak.com and also on iTunes. Now, once again, we're talking about Star Trek fan films, and one of the most fabled fan films existed back in 1985 when it began production. Sadly, it didn't quite finish, and in 1987, the project was abandoned. Now, once again, Yorktown, A Time to Heal, is once again on the map, and we're looking forward to the release towards the end of the year. Joining me on the line now to talk about the project is producer John Atkin. John, you're very welcome, and thank you for coming on with me.
Hi, thank you, Darren. Thank you for having me on your show.
Now, what an amazing project this is. Perhaps some of the viewers and listeners would have read about this in Starlog magazine, I believe, quite a while back. And that's where the story begins for you. I believe as a young kid, you actually read about this film long before you were ever involved.
That's right. Issue 119 of Starlog back in 1987. I would have been about 12 years old at the time. And I remember I bought the magazine because it had some interviews on the Superman film at the time. And within the pages was this little article about this short fan film starring George Takei. And it just totally blew my mind. I knew at the time, I think around the time that's when they were making Star Trek 4. And here was this little fan film that was being made that actually took place between the original series, the time between the original series and Star Trek the Motion Picture. So as a kid, I was just really fascinated by that.
It's been a long time, hasn't it? And so many people actually did read about it in that magazine and have spoken about it ever since, but never did get a chance to see it. So at some point then, you must have decided, let me go and find that film. Was it real? Was it a dream? How did you actually come round to deciding, right, I've got to track this filmmaker down and see if that film project ever existed, and is there anything I can do with it?
Yeah, well, that's pretty much exactly how it happened. I was killing myself trying to find information on this film, and I was looking online because I assumed, something by now would have been posted on YouTube or something like that, but I couldn't find anything. So I did some more and more searching, and I ended up going to the Trek BBS site where some people had been talking about it, and I saw that the original director of the film, he had a little bit of footage and he was trying to get a project started using that, but it wasn't very much footage. What he had was an old VHS tape or something. So I started doing some more research, and I decided to start up a Facebook group called Yorktown, A Time to Heal. And one of the first people who ended up joining the group was Andrew Probert, who a lot of Trekkies would know as the designer of Captain Picard's USS Enterprise, and he also was one of the designers on the Enterprise from Star Trek the Motion Picture. And so he joined the group, and I sent him a message saying, hi, how are you? And he told me a little bit about his history on the project, and told me about Stan Wu, who was the producer of the film. So that's how I ended up being able to get a hold of Stan Wu and discuss the project with him.
One of the most fascinating elements, of course, of this production is the involvement of Trek alumni and Hollywood alumni, Andrew Probert being such a key figure to designing some of the main ships, as you mentioned, the Picard Enterprise and other involvement in the movies. This was an amazing person to have on board, not least to say, of course, the involvement of George Takei, which was going to shock a lot of people, that here was George playing Sulu in between the search for Spock and the voyage home. What an incredible association, and I think another driving factor, I think the want for this film and why fans have continued to talk about it. I suppose his involvement, George Takei, it fell somewhere, as I said, between 3 and 4. It was a kind of a strange thing to have a guy like that involved in a fan film, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was really unheard of at the time. What Stan Wu, the producer, had told me was he had heard that George Takei had a walk-on role in a fan film. So he had actually appeared in one fan film before,
Wow.
but he didn't have any lines or anything. It was just like kind of walking past the camera, kind of, wink of an eye kind of thing. And so that seeded the idea of asking George, if he'd like to be in his fan film. And Stan Wu had already produced a fan film back in 1981, between 81 and 84, called Yorktown in Temporary Command. And this was really a high school kind of fan film. It started off when they were in their senior year of high school, and then they finished it when they were in college. They made this little fan film, and they submitted it to a film festival, and they ended up winning a prize for best science fiction film at the festival. And from that, they decided that they were going to work on a sequel, which they ended up calling Yorktown 2, A Time to Heal, because it was going to be originally a direct sequel to their high school film. But once they got George involved in the project, they realized, we want to have this be a little more of an adult Star Trek fan film. And so they scrapped the idea of it being a sequel and just decided to make it its own entity, its own film. So what happened with Stan was Stan's dad, who was basically the executive producer on the film, he funded it, Jim Woo. He had a relative named Michael Wu who was running for a council seat in Hollywood. And Michael was having a fundraising dinner at a restaurant, and George Takei was one of the guests there. Stan had met George a few years earlier in high school, so he went over and he reintroduced himself. And after talking to him for a few minutes, he told him about the Star Trek fan film that he was working on, Yorktown, and he asked him if he'd like to be in it. And to his surprise, George ended up saying sure. And he gave him his home phone number, told him to give him a call. And about 3 weeks later, Stan went and met him at a creation convention and handed him a script. And then they started shooting George's scenes in July of 1985.
And the rest then is history. Of course, George Takei as well has made almost a new name for himself in these past recent years, and he's kind of gone back up to the top of mainstream culture, involvement with the Occupy movement and other things like that. So again, a very timely release if this project is out in the next 12 to 18 months, or however long it takes to have George involved. And I'm sure there's going to be even more renewed interest, not just Star Trek, but of course George's own popular culture interests now that people have in him. He's almost become like the next William Shatner, if you like.
I was just going to say.
He's on the way, isn't he? He's getting there. Of course, it's really interesting to think that this filmmaker, Stan Wu, as you mentioned, in association with Jim Wu, that they had gotten together and they brought this project together, and it went so far. Do you have any idea exactly what happened and what kind of stopped it eventually and led it to not be fully completed?
Well, there's a couple of things that happened there, but the main reason was Jim Wu was Stan's father, and the film was starting to take over Stan's life. And Stan at the time was a student in college, and the marks were starting to slip a little bit. So that's really the main reason as to why it ended up stopping at that point. It just his grades were starting to suffer, and it was put on the back burner because of it.
It's very interesting as well. This, of course, not just a remastering project. You are also adding new scenes. You've been filming various different people, and you're going to add footage from today to the footage of yesterday. Can you tell me a bit more about that?
Yeah, well, we've actually filmed a couple of scenes. So far, we've got 2 Klingon scenes shot. One's just a very short take. It's of an actor dressed up as a Klingon captain who appears on a view screen. And the other scene is of the pilot who's flying Andrew Probert's Klingon K-fighter at the very start of the film. And for that was all shot actually about 3 weeks ago in San Francisco. And it was all shot in front of green screen. So the our special effects guy, Roland Baron, he's going to be going in and adding a digital background to that scene.
So also, the film was originally shot, I believe, on Super 8. Now, probably it would be a bit of a challenge to match that Super 8 to the new footage. How have you been accomplishing that?
Well, it's getting a little bit easier these days actually to take digital footage and make it look like it's Super 8. A lot cheaper to do that too on the computer. The editors that are going to be editing the film are going to be editing it in such a way so that they're going to be adding film grain to it. So even though it's shot with digital cameras, it'll end up looking like it's been shot on Super 8. So we're hoping that it'll be fairly seamless when it's edited together.
That certainly is the sweetest part for me, that you are taking the time to do that, and to sort of update it, if you like, is a huge thing, and it's certainly not an easy task. And I do respect, the entire team and the original team for even trying to do a Star Trek fan film. I've spoken about the fan films once or twice here on Trek Speak, and one thing I've picked up from people is that it is a huge challenge, and even people who've made films of a different nature, they always say that to actually do Star Trek is the biggest thing and the hardest thing that they've ever done. I suppose, is there any part of you that perhaps wants to, after the original and this new remastered is put together and released, to maybe even do another Yorktown? I was even thinking Takei, George, may even well do it again,
Well, if we ever did another Yorktown, it would really depend when it was set. I think if we used George again, it would have to take place sometime after Star Trek 6, because he has aged a little bit. We all have. But we've talked about it. We've talked about possibly doing another Yorktown movie after this one. For myself, I really just want to focus on this. So I'm trying not to jump ahead too far into the future, but you can't help it,
Absolutely.
So, yeah, so it's I would say right now that that's a possibility.
I'm sure fans are going to be happy to hear it. And of course, as you said, Andrew Probert, the man involved in designing the ships, and then teaming up with your own visual effects artist, Roland Baron, who's done some outstanding work. Of course, you can see the trailer on YouTube, Yorktown, Time to Heal, search that, and you'll get a look at some of the updated visual effects and what you can maybe expect. Of course, having Roland on the project is a great coup. He previously worked for Of Gods and Men, right?
That's right. Yeah, he worked on Star Trek Of Gods and Men, and which is another great fan film there. They had the original actors who played Chekhov and Uhura in that one. And I ended up seeing his work on that film, and I also saw some of the work he did for a project just for fun. He went and redid special effects for Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan. If you go on Roland Baron's YouTube page, you can see the effects, and they were just incredible, just incredible. And so that really sold me on him. And so I contacted him and I said, hey, how would you like to help out on this film? And I was holding my breath waiting for an answer, but he contacted me a few days later and said, yeah, love to work on it. So we've been working together on it now for about a year and a half.
In the original cut of the film, were there actually any visual effects?
There was. I'll tell you right now, the models that they were working with, and if you go to our Facebook page, you can actually see some photos of some of the models, and you can tell looking at the Yorktown model that it's one of those old AMT USS Enterprise models, and they basically kit bashed it to make it look like Andrew's drawings of the Yorktown. And yeah, I can honestly say the new CGI looks a lot better. Looks a lot better. It's the model was nice, but it looked like something a hobby builder would have built or something. So, and they tried filming it with a rear projection screen. I don't think they did any green screen. I think it was just rear projection, but it ended up being that the effects didn't really look too good. So they wanted to wait till they were able to actually do those effects justice.
I have to say fair play to them. As you say, I didn't realize that they had used a model back then, and you know, in a sense they were replicating how perhaps it was done in Hollywood at the time, you know, with the models. And I believe they were using a model up until Voyager, late season in Voyager, and then on to Enterprise, where the CGI kind of took hold. And then anytime you saw a ship, I did like the model aspect of it, and you know, I would have liked to have seen some of that. Will any of that be included? I presume you're going to have entirely remastered.
Yeah, I'm actually not sure how much of the footage of the Yorktown model, the original one, actually exists. I have to talk to Stan about that. If we do have any of that footage, then yeah, definitely I'd like to be able to put some of that on, a free download or something like that.
And of course, are there several ships involved? Is it just the Yorktown, or are there enemy ships as well?
There's a couple of ships. They're all Probert ships. Let's see. We've got the USS Yorktown. At the very beginning of the film, it appears as a Constitution class starship, so it looks like the Enterprise from the '60s series. And then after that, we see it when it's been become a test bed ship. So it looks like a combination of the original series Enterprise and the movie Enterprise, with some modifications. And then there was a Klingon K fighter, which is a small, kind of like a shuttlecraft, with a little more teeth to it. And the other ship was, I find it very hard to pronounce. Hopefully I'm saying it right. The Nagir, or the Najir. It's Reagan spelled backwards.
Right.
And, like Ronald Reagan, the president. And Stan told me that the idea behind that was Reagan equals good and Najir equals evil. I guess it depends, you know, who you vote for, Republican or Democrat. But
That's a nice touch.
But the Najir, it's a ship that Andrew designed, and it looks very similar to the Vulcan shuttlecraft in Star Trek: The Motion Picture. It has the same kind of warp nacelles, but then the top part of it, it looks like a pod that connects onto the warp nacelles. It's much different than the Vulcan shuttle, and so it's a really nice, has a nice unique look to it. And then we'll also have a Klingon battle cruiser appear at the beginning of the film as well.
Of course, it goes without saying that these Andrew Probert designs are absolutely top class. I mean, they are television, movie quality even. And of course, the Klingon fighter, that's my own personal favourite. As you said, if you have a look at your Facebook, we'll put that address on the screen and people can go and check that out. All those photos are there, and the new artwork is gradually being uploaded there. And all new material, I think, that comes your way makes it to the Facebook, doesn't it?
Yeah, I post things pretty quick once pictures and stuff come my way. So I try to post something new every week.
And regarding the music, how are you going to do that? Are you going to score that yourself, or is there somebody doing that?
I have a good friend of mine, Christopher Barr, who's going to be putting the music together for the film. And he's worked on a couple of different film projects, television shows and stuff over the years. And yeah, I contacted him, asked him if he'd like to do it. Huge fan of Star Trek, so he said sure. And if you listen to the trailer that we posted, the special effects trailer with Yorktown blowing up at the beginning, that's all Christopher's music on that.
That's excellent, and as I say, you can get a great idea of how high-end this is going to be in terms of the new footage, combined with that classic footage, which of course has gained cult status, I think, at this point. I'm sure it's been discussed in conventions for decades, and I think you weren't the only person who read that Starlog magazine. It seems like it really did get the word out there that this was there. I wonder, I know you would have to probably ask this, but did Stan, hear about it a lot over the years? I mean, have people asked him, why did that never come out? I suppose it's more of a rhetorical question than anything,
Oh yeah, anyone in Star Trek circles who knew Stan definitely asked him about that, and it's kind of an interesting story there. Like it's had a real history, that film. His dad, like I said, kind of put a stop to the production because his marks were suffering, and then afterwards, I guess it would have been about just a few years later after that. Stan was preparing to make a transfer of the film at his workplace. He was working at a Circuit City in Los Angeles, and he had the reels in the back of his car, or at least he thought he did. And his car ended up being stolen from the parking lot. And Stan thought that the reels were in the car, so he thought that the film was actually lost forever. And as fortune would have it, it ended up being that his mom had been cleaning up his room one day, found a bag containing the footage, and tossed it in the closet. I guess it got buried under some stuff. So years later, after Stan was married and everything, he went to his parents' house and he ended up finding this footage in his old bedroom. So it's pretty crazy, the history behind this film.
And there it was. I'm sure when he reeled up those reels and saw those images, he must have been just so ecstatic and excited to see that once again. It's just so fascinating, really, to me. And as I say, I had not heard of it. I think it was obviously the Sulu inclusion that makes you go, wow. But even more so, I mean, just to have a film made even in the mid 80s, films were made for a long time, but to have them made at that level and also to have someone attempting Star Trek, it just seems very early for that. And, I certainly think it's got to be one of the most prestigious fan films, maybe of all time. And again, it's going to be so great to see what's there. Talking about the actual cast and characters in the show, and also I think in general the plot of it. Can you tell me exactly, I suppose, the overarching plot and maybe some of the characters involved?
Plot of the film, what it's supposed to be is there's essentially a terrorist group that is kind of like a group for hire that works for the Orion crime syndicate, and in the film they're called Shark, and Shark stands for something. I'd have to look it up, but it's it's an abbreviation for something, and yeah, they end up attacking the USS Yorktown at the beginning of the film. And at the beginning of the film, the Yorktown is still a 1960s style Constitution class starship. And it's attacked in a suicide run. And so they end up taking the ship in to get fixed. They spend a year fixing it up, and it becomes a test bed ship for new technologies.
Regarding the cast, they of course would have played their part many, many years ago. Have you actually spoken with any of those cast members and sort of told them, look, we're back on, we're in production again?
Well, like myself, I haven't talked to George Takei or James Shigeta or anyone like that, but I have talked to some of the other actors that worked on the film. I talked to JJ Sylvia, who was played the captain of the Yorktown. Will Rodriguez, who's an officer on that, who also has his own Star Trek fan film series that he's trying to do right now, Star Trek Excalibur. And who else did I talk to? A couple of people there, a couple of people. Roger Witter, who worked on both fan films, Yorktown, Intemporary Command, and A Time to Heal. And yeah, I also I was responsible for casting the new actors in the film that for all the new scenes that were shot.
That's right. You've got plenty of new things coming. Some of those scenes, there was a shot on Facebook of a Klingon. Is there something new being added there?
With the Klingon, yeah, all the Klingon shots are actually all brand new. They never filmed anything with Klingons in the '80s. I cast Liam Collins, who makes amazing Klingon costumes. He made costume parts for Star Trek of Gods and Men, and I think a few other Phase 2 productions.
Right.
And I contacted him, and I think he just thought I wanted a costume, and I said, "No, I'd like you to be in the film if you'd like to do this part."
Yeah.
So he ended up filming the short scene of Captain Mock, and for the Klingon scenes, none of it's in English. It's all in Klingon. So we'll be putting subtitles on the screen. And I had a Klingon translator who lives out in Vancouver, Canada, translate the lines for us. So,
That's great. Will you be putting on the Klingon font as well, like the classic movie when you put up the subtitles?
yeah, I'm hoping it'll look something like the classic movie or maybe Star Trek Six. Those kind of subtitles for sure.
That certainly is, I think, the blueprint, isn't it? The Star Trek 6 movie really did nail, I think, the Klingons and the culture. And again, a really nice touch. You can tell it's Star Trek fans involved when you shoot a scene like that in Klingon. Do you go back a long way in terms of watching Star Trek?
I've been watching Star Trek for as long as I can remember, probably since I was about 4 years old. I remember seeing Star Trek the motion picture as a kid at the movie theater. And I remember running around with my arms extended, pretending I was the Enterprise. So, yeah,
We've all done it.
Definitely a big fan.
Yeah, absolutely. So it really must be a dream job in a sense. I mean, I suppose I did ask you in the beginning the background of it, but it's almost like a bit of inspiration that came to you. I mean, how did you kind of say to yourself, I'm actually going to set this task for myself. I'm going to go and find this film, or was it a kind of a succession of kind of finding people and going, right, this is actually possible to resurrect?
Well, it really was a succession because, I started up the group because I wanted to get more information on the film, and I was hoping people could post pictures and stuff like that, and it was a project I was really interested in. I didn't really plan on working on the film, though. That kind of ended up being a natural progression there. Myself, I have a background in theater, and I've worked on some films and stuff before in the past, but that wasn't really something I was interested in at first. Once I started talking to Stan, and he told me about some of the scenes that hadn't been shot that still needed to be filmed, that's when I said, well, hey, I know some people in Toronto. I could probably put a team together. We could, film some of that stuff that's missing. And so it kind of grew from that.
And when you first mentioned it to Stan Wu, when you got in touch with him, was he at all surprised, like somebody actually remembers this, or how did he react when you first contacted him?
Oh, he was really nice about it. Like Andrew Probert had told me that Stan was living in Los Angeles, but I didn't have a phone number or an email, so I did, the old-fashioned Google search, and I ended up finding an email address for Stan Wu working at a community college. And so I sent an email and said, hey, is this Stan Wu who worked on Yorktown? And he sent me a nice message back saying, yes, that's who he was. And so we just started kind of chatting from there.
It's amazing. Of course, now right at this moment on YouTube, as you said, you can catch the new visual effects trailer with the new visual effects by Roland Baron. There is also an older trailer, and I do note that perhaps that is of lesser quality than what you may have now. It's a non-remastered version that's out there at the moment with footage of Sulu.
Lesser quality. That's a polite way of putting it. Yeah, it doesn't look very good, to be honest. Every time I mean, it's interesting to watch, but I think it's given a lot of people the wrong impression that that's what the actual film quality looks like. But no, it looks much better than that. Stan sent me some of the Super 8 to use to make a trailer, and the quality of the film is much better than what you saw in that VHS tape.
Brilliant. It is an important thing to note, isn't it? Because these film masters contain far higher quality than a VHS could ever do. And as you say, it's probably something that people have seen. And To be honest, I think either way, when they've seen Sulu, I'm sure they're won over anyway. But to actually get it now in a much, much higher quality will truly sort of keep it sort of alive and there. So would the plan be to eventually post it on YouTube, or would it be sort of conventions, or how would you kind of handle the release, and maybe any idea of when possibly it could be out?
Well, with fan films, like the big thing is, you can't make a profit off of them, right? So my understanding is they can't be shown at like paid conventions and stuff like that. But I mean, it can be shown to a group of friends, that sort of thing, and you can show it on YouTube or Vimeo websites like that. So we'll definitely be posting it on YouTube. Definitely.
Excellent. So that's where people are going to have to look out for it. Of course, as we've said, you can have a look at the Facebook, and also you've got, I think it's the Trek BBS that has an official Yorktown thread, and I know, John, you post information there as well and keep it up to date. And also, of course, to mention Orion Press, who also keep up to date and let people know exactly what's going on. So it's quite a big task ahead of you, John, at this point. I suppose, are you well underway? Are you close to completion? Is there a lot to do? I mean, what stage are you at this point?
Well, there's still a fair amount to do. Right now, like I said, I've got a fair bit of the Super 8 footage, but Stan Wu right now still has the entire film, and so right now I'm waiting to get more of it sent to me. I'm actually going down to Los Angeles to visit him in September. So I'll be picking up most of the remaining film at that time. So chances are it's going to take us a few months to edit it and stuff this fall. My hope right now is that it'll be done sometime next year, hopefully between January and March of 2013. I think that's a realistic goal. And, a lot of people have been waiting for this film, to see this film for over 25 years. And I don't think it's really fair to keep the fans waiting. So once we have that footage and once we're able to edit it, we're going to go full force and get it done.
I know how these things work, and there's an analogy that the goalposts can move, if you like, and suddenly there could be issues that you run into, and things change. So it is tricky to kind of pin down a release date. I certainly understand that. And regards the audio, I mean, is everything in good shape in terms of that? And how was that recorded? Was it quite good?
From what I've heard, like most of the ADR sounds good to me. My editor that's going to be working on the film, he's Kyle Wilson. He's going to be doing a lot of work fixing up the sound for us. So there is a little bit of work to do with that. I'm hoping that we won't have to re-record over any of the actors' lines because I'd like to have the original voices be in the film. With George Takei, I've heard pretty much all of his lines in the film, and he sounds fantastic, thank God. So don't have to knock on his door asking him to re-record or anything like that.
Honestly, I really believe that when this film sort of sees the light of day, I'm pretty sure he's either going to get in touch with you or somehow you're going to hear from him, because I'm sure he may have even long since forgotten about it.
Oh, I doubt he's forgotten about it, but I think he'll be surprised when it's finished. I think it's one of those things where it was like a moment in time, and some of the people that worked on it, thought that was it. It wasn't going to be finished. I know a lot of the people that worked on the film who contacted me were really surprised that it was getting finished, but we're really happy about it. So.
Absolutely. Of course, you mentioned briefly there, I just wanted to quickly ask you, you do have a bit of a background in film yourself. You were part of Hulk, the movie at some point, were you?
Yeah, I worked on the Ed Norton film, The Incredible Hulk.
Wow.
I spent about 2 months working on that film. I was hired kind of as a military advisor. I was showing guys how to properly use guns and stuff like that.
Cool.
And basically, I worked as kind of an extra on the film, shooting guns at the Hulk, and then I ended up being cast as the helicopter pilot at the end of the film.
Wow.
Yeah, so when the Hulk jumps on the helicopter and the helicopter crashes, I'm the one flying it. So
All right, I'm gonna have to have a look out for that again now.
yeah.
I mean, that's huge. I mean, that's motion picture. When you came off set that day, you must have been thrilled to bits, were you?
Oh yeah, that was a fantastic film to work on. I ended up going to the wrap party and meeting all the cast and stuff like that, and yeah, that was a lot of fun.
It's excellent. It just shows you that this film is in the right hands. That here's yourself, and you've been involved in film, and I think it's a natural progression then to sort of try and to get your own productions moving. And I think it could all be a natural thing to have this old footage, and like I say, you're producing the new stuff. And I think all the best is what I'd like to wish you, and best of luck to yourself and the cast, the crew, of course Stan Wu, Jem Ong Woo, George Takei, everyone that was involved in the original, and all of the new production team that are involved today. I think it's a wonderful, wonderful story, and I think the film is going to be so hotly anticipated, and I think enjoyed for many, many years to come.
Oh yeah, I really hope people like it when it's done, and myself being involved the past 2 years, I've just had a blast working on it. So yeah, I hope everyone really enjoys it.
Absolutely. So John, thanks very, very much. Now, would you like to maybe let us know again? So you can go to Facebook, that's Yorktown, A Time to Heal, you can search that. And is there anywhere else maybe that I suppose the Trek BBS, as I mentioned, and Orion Press, does that about cover the bases there?
Yeah, I'd say that about covers it. Orion Press is really great for posting a lot of new information as to who's working behind the scenes and stuff. And the Facebook group is definitely the best place to see new pictures of the different ships and the actors and cast and whatnot.
Great. Well, John, we will hopefully have another chat with you closer to the release, and that's something I look forward to. So I want to say once again, best of luck, and thank you very much for having a chat with me today.
Thank you, Darren.